Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, Google, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
and Peter.
Episode number 9, recorded on February 5th, 2019. Title, Redhat Drops support for the Cloud Pod. Welcome to the Cloud Pod. It's a lovely evening, and we are here drinking and going over the news for the week.
I have somewhat of a glass of Jim Beam left, mostly gone though.
I discussed Crown Royale this morning at work, and so then that became the drink of choice this evening.
Yes, I like Crown.
And then how about you, Peter? Oh, that's right. Peter's unfortunately not with us today, but we brought in a fantastic substitute, Ryan Lucas. How about you introduce yourself real quick, Ryan?
How's it going? I'm drinking a Jameson's triple distilled Irish whiskey because I only go for the fanciest of drinks.
Wow, that sounds dangerous.
Sounds very dangerous. You haven't listened to the show often. It's normally more tame than that.
It's just Jameson. You just read the fine print. It's all triple distilled.
Fair enough. All right. Well, we have a lot of news this week, and we will get started. So, quick follow-up. Last time we talked about Microsoft's earnings, as we had just gotten them announced before we recorded the podcast. It did recover the next day and has been typical up and downs with the market. So, while Azure business was supposedly slowing, it definitely did not have a huge impact on the stock, as we expected and we talked about last week. Since then, we've had more earnings because it's earnings season, and Amazon announced their earnings, $7.43 billion in cloud revenue, up from $5.11 billion a year ago, which is a very large increase, accounted for 58% of the overall Amazon revenue in the quarter, but margin was down a little bit from 31% to 29%. And analysts said, with substantial upside potential for AWS, a strong track record, we think we can safely assume significant ongoing revenue growth for the foreseeable future. Fantastic news out of the Amazon front. Great Christmas season for them.
Yeah, they bought a lot of people recently. I'm kind of wondering if that 2% is from all their acquisitions.
Those acquisitions mostly were announced in January. They have not closed yet. So I'd expect to see them impact their numbers in Q1. reInvent is also in Q4. So those costs do come into their margin. So if they didn't break even on reInvent this year, because Skrillex was pretty expensive, that might be part of it too.
Yeah, well, they skimmed out on the coffee this year, so they must have saved some money there.
Ryan's got nothing.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
What does tumbleweed sound like as it rolls through the podcast?
I think we just heard it. I think that's what that was. That was I at reInvent? Because I don't really remember it all that well for some reason.
There was copious amounts of alcohol, and as we talked about in our recap show, so I'm not surprised. All right, well, moving right along to Google, or as they like to be called now, Alphabet. They beat their earnings forecast. They do not break out their cloud spend or cloud revenue because it's apparently too small to brag about yet. But they did say it was growing. It is part of the other revenue category of their earnings, which did increase 31% to $6.49 billion. So you have a little bit of idea of what the spend increase was, but that also includes smartphones and smart speakers and Google Play apps. And of course, Q4 is Christmas. And I bet a lot of people got some Android phones under the tree. Good quarter for them as well. And moving on from earnings, Google Cloud Firestore NoSQL database hits GA. This is a serverless NoSQL document database, mobile focused or IoT, which is interesting because you can actually run this database offline on your mobile device or in the cloud. It is single region database available or multi-region database now, and they provide 99.9% for a single region and 99.99% availability for multi-region, and it is available in several different regions. So my first comment on this is Amazon, take note. This is a SLA on launch of a product.
Not only that, but that they supported multiple regions in the first release and then single regions for GA. That's like completely backwards.
Yeah, only multiple regions in the first release. What a great narrative. Look at the cost savings that you now can run it and where it'll go down more often.
Maybe they just wanted to collect a bunch of data. Maybe they needed people to do the testing for the multi-region for them, which is why they enforced it to begin with.
Yeah, I imagine it's part of their global cloud spanner database technology story that they wanted to show that they could do something in multi-region because of their prior announcements around databases have been a little bit weak. But they did not present a SLA for the phone. I guess they don't expect my phone to be multi-region aware. Or if it's on my phone.
I think that's a fair assumption.
Yeah, I mean, 1.9 availability on my phone is probably the best I can hope for.
I like the technology that you can run locally and in the cloud, especially on mobile devices. It makes it great for app developers.
Well, it's a nice alternative to the databases you run on the phone, which are normally not document databases. So it's a nice product. This one looks cool.
I guess it's a kind of the NoSQL competitor to SQLite.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, let's talk about outages, and we've debated bringing an outage of the week section into the cloud pod here, but it's a lot of SRE sympathy we have to dish out then. So we'll only save it for the big ones. But this is a big one. DNS outage resulted in Azure database outages and data loss. So on January 29th, Azure database service lost database records due to a DNS and automation error. Apparently, their DNS provider, who was apparently level 3, had an outage of some sort due to software defect. Automation was not able to reach the Microsoft Keys vault where the TDE keys are stored, and so that triggered some automation that basically deleted the database.
Yeah, quotes, software defect, close quotes. That's funny.
Yeah.
But seriously, who writes any automation that just deletes databases?
I thought this was a genius idea. As one who likes to clean environments like fairly aggressively, I was like, yeah, no, if I can't reach those keys, nuke it. I probably don't need that data anyway. But yeah, maybe some safety checks are warranted.
Maybe more than a 5 or 10 minute warning before they go ahead and do that. But it's cool that they were taking snapshots of this every 5 minutes in the background.
Yeah, that was my favorite part, was the ability to restore as quickly as they did, only losing 5 minutes of transactions.
I like how they talked about it had to be manually addressed, which meant was probably lost. It was well done wording in the the articles about this topic. It's interesting to me too that you are building a cloud service that you want your customers to use, and your primary DNS is not yourselves. Your primary DNS is a third party who you don't control and who's had numerous DNS issues in the last 2 or 3 months. Maybe not the best plan.
They're not the go-to people for modern technology.
Well, that's a commentary on Microsoft in general, isn't it?
Perhaps, yeah.
Well, FedService hasn't been well respected for a while, or level 3.
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, hopefully SRE people at Microsoft have gotten some sleep after that mistake, and some automation's been updated, because that's not an outage they want to repeat anytime soon.
Speaking of DevOps, when I think of DevOps in the cloud, I think of Foghorn Consulting. Foghorn has been around since 2008. They've been on the forefront of cloud enablement and have delivered powerful transformations for hundreds of clients, from startups to Fortune 500, including highly regulated industries. They were early visionaries and practitioners of using code to automate infrastructure and operations to drive up cloud efficiencies while driving down costs. Terraform, Ansible, Jenkins, AWS, Azure, and GCP. Go to fogops.io/thecloudpod to learn more about their FogOps services and sign up for a free, well-architected framework review.
Next up, Microsoft has launched AMD-based Azure instances. They now have several instances that provide up to 80 virtual CPU configurations. They are targeted for high-volume I/O workloads, particularly for analytics and databases, and they do come with 19 terabytes of flash storage if you want that many. They either come in 2 configurations, 32 cores from 2 gigahertz to 2.55 gigahertz, or 3 gigahertz for a single core for your single-threaded applications. Cost-wise, it's a little bit cheaper than an Intel-based Windows server. My calculations were $796 for Intel for the same configuration, $724 for this AMD, so you save about $72.
Do you think performance for I/O is the real driver for this, or do you think they're just diversifying? Amazon did the same thing recently. Do you think they're just diversifying to protect themselves from the next zero-day, CPU bug?
That's an interesting theory. I hadn't thought of that. I was thinking it was more of a way to get pricing pressure on Intel, and to also mitigate risk of the fact that Intel's roadmap has been atrocious for the last few years. And so if these EPYC processors from AMD are providing the same level of throughput and capacity, or maybe even better throughput, for slightly less money, it seems like a good play for the cloud providers who are trying to squeeze every dollar out of their margin into the customer base. So it's a good idea. I hadn't thought about that, but AMD had some problems in some of those issues last year too. Not as much as Intel, but definitely does mitigate some risk.
Yeah.
The other fun news around AMD processors was Oracle basically came out and said, their AMD processors perform 30% better at 3 times better price to performance ratios than Amazon's. And so this was a comparison between what Oracle calls their EPYC BM.E2.64 versus Amazon's M5A and R5A 24X large. And when you look at the specs of these things, it's either 2 EPYC EPYC 7024 core per socket at 2.5 gigahertz versus Oracle's 32 cores per socket times 2 at 2 gigahertz
Yeah.
with way more RAM memory and a little bit faster networking speed. So it's a little crazy.
That's fine. Let me fix that for you, Oracle. Your CPUs that have 50% more cores perform as expected better than the CPUs that don't. That's slow hand clap for Oracle.
If you're not cheating, you're not trying. I applaud them for their tenacity in this comparison.
But what about the cost, though? I mean, I actually haven't looked at the cost. I don't know how transparent the cost is of the Oracle Cloud. The article mentions like significant cost savings. Like, is it really significant cost savings, or are they just hiding some of those things in the details?
Well, I mean, as typical Oracle pricing, it's probably buried in a web page on a PDF somewhere that I don't know where it's at, and so I have not gone onto their pricing website because I can never find anything. But I'm sure there's a calculator. I don't know where it's at.
Yeah, like if it's Oracle and you only want a 2-core VM, do they still charge you for the whole 32 cores?
Well, and I assume that if you want access to the pricing calculator, you probably have to pay them for that access.
The license, you can get access. They're just going to audit you later.
Right. You looked at the price list, so clearly you must have spun up something that they're not billing you for yet. I'm glad everyone's getting this AMD thing. I think it's nice, competitive landscape situation. Maybe they can work on comparing apples to apples and actually have good comparisons between the vendors. But I think you're right, Jonathan. In some ways, it's a mitigate the risk, and I think I'm also right in that it's a pricing maneuver against Intel. And if AMD keeps innovating and Intel keeps struggling to get to 18 nanometers and the different die sizes, that this is a good option for these guys.
Yeah, AMD had a win recently. They're allowed now to was it like the 14 nanometer tech that they can now build without having to pay royalties. I've been watching the AMD stock for a little while.
Well, how much of their stock is impacted by GPUs and the Bitcoin mining craze of the last few years versus actual AMD processor movement? So I think it's nice these EPYC chips are coming up to snuff with Intel Xeon stuff. At this point in time, especially with the graphics market kind of dying off and Bitcoin losing favor, but how much of their revenues are tied to compute versus graphics, and that's always been a question mark.
At least AMD have regular CPUs going for them, whereas NVIDIA don't.
So Amazon Corretto 8 is now GA, and this is a topic we would definitely have talked about pre-invent, but we didn't have a podcast yet. So Amazon, before reInvent started, basically announced that they were going to come out with their own version of Java JDK, their own open JDK distribution, really, called Corretto. And so this went into beta before reInvent. It is no-cost, multi-platform, production-ready open JDK distribution. The GA supports Java 8U 202 compatibility, basically, and supports Amazon Linux 2, RPM-based Linux flavors, Debian-based Linux, Windows 7 or later, and macOS 10.10 or later. So that's pretty awesome. Super glad to see this get GA'd relatively quickly after the beta started before reInvent.
This is really cool. I have like 3 or 4 different things to say about this. Like, firstly, it's a middle finger to Oracle. Secondly, the way Oracle enforced or force people to do updates of the JDK or even the runtime in production was just a nightmare. Like, there's no Linux repository for it. You had to literally go and download these artifacts manually and stick them someplace, or write some hackish script that saved cookies so they could download the latest Java things. It's like this ultimate anti-pattern for regular updates, and to see Amazon release something like this with the transparency that they have and the ease of updates that they have is fantastic.
Thirdly, it's a middle finger to Oracle.
Absolutely. And probably fourthly and fifthly as well. But what's with the name, though? Corretto? I don't know. Does that mean something?
No, I wanted to research that. I didn't get that either, but I thought it was an interesting thing.
It makes me think of ice cream or something. Like, I don't know.
Like a car, a Corvette.
Cafe Corretto.
Yeah, it's an Italian beverage.
That's right.
Consisting of a shot of espresso with a small amount of liquor, usually grappa, and sometimes sambuca or brandy. So it's a lovely, tasty drink we should try next week on the show.
Yeah, fair enough. Cool.
But also, they also announced that there's an official Docker image for this too. So you can now download this into your Docker container as Amazon Corretto :8 or latest, and this will be what you'll end up getting on your machine. So if you're using Docker and you're looking for Java, this is nice that it's officially supported by Amazon and part of their bundle of Corretto. They have promised to provide releases and patches on this until June 2023, which I'm a little unsure why they've put an end date on this. Like they only want to give the middle finger to Oracle for a few more years, and then they don't feel this is worthwhile, or they feel like Java's dying and so they don't need to support it after 2023.
Well, presumably they're going to support Java 11 or Corretto 11 until way later than that, but those builds aren't going to start until April.
So that wasn't clear to me when they say they're promising support until 2023. If that's for 8,
Yeah.
Great. If it's for if 11's longer than that, it's not clear to me in the announcement. But maybe that's what they meant to say and didn't say so. But
yeah, that's how I read it. Was more of like trying to build confidence that this isn't something that we're just going to support for a short period of time and then sort of not look at anymore. We have at least forecasted till this time, and then there'll probably be a new one that we have at that point.
Yeah, and they basically have the guy who invented Java working for them right now, so you can assume that this is going to be fairly reliable and performant and worth switching to.
Yeah, I'm excited to see some benchmarks. Now that it's GA, I expect to see a bunch more benchmarks coming online and being able to see what people are doing, and super excited. I think it's great.
Yep.
Oracle's going to be on the topic again, unfortunately. So their Oracle CISO wrote an opinion piece that they posted on the Oracle blog that I caught my attention, and the title of it is "Security in the Cloud: Are Audits and Certifications Really Enough?" And he goes on to point out several different issues: confusion in the shared security model, points out that PCI compliant companies still get breached, points out that your security cloud provider has to have a culture of security, which is just, all three of these just scream of consultant speak. And these are all things that I don't necessarily agree with. And the only positive I saw in this, which was really caught my attention in this article, is I was afraid he was saying that the only way to get true security of a data center or cloud was to visit it. But at least he didn't advocate for that, which I've been super happy about Amazon really pushing back on data center visits as a form of auditing. But overall, I thought this was a lot of FUD.
I clicked on that link and I didn't really pay attention to who'd written the article. And by the time we got to the end, I was thinking, God, I hope this guy doesn't ever end up in charge of like a security team or something at a place I work. And I realized he's actually the CSO. So, but how crazy? I mean, like, what do we need to do? Like, we do need to certify new certifications for companies to show that they have good culture. And I don't know. It seems to be confusing. It seems to be confusing the fact that a provider can be compliant with PCI and the applications that run on those platforms. Like, I'm sure Amazon is compliant with PCI. However, you can run any kind of crap application you like and be non-compliant. So for him to point out that there's been breaches of people who run in PCI compliant environments, it's kind of nonsense, really.
He talked about the shared security model, and they were talking about how it was confusing. And they point to this article, this cloud threat report, jointly authored by, of course, Oracle and KPMG, and how customers don't understand their role in the shared security model, and how they don't understand that the cloud provider isn't responsible for securing an S3 bucket, for example. And that's just kind of what you need to understand if you're moving to the cloud. So if you're listening to the podcast and you don't understand the shared security model, I really strongly recommend you read several of the security blogs about it, several of the Amazon and Azure and Google documents on the shared security model, because it's really fundamental to your entire security program. It's a key pillar of the entire security story of the cloud. But yeah, it's just really weird. Points out culture of security of the cloud provider. I don't know how I would ask that question. Like, oh, do you not care about security? Which vendor is not going to tell you they care about security? And having seen the CISO of Amazon talk, you can tell that he lives and breathes security every day, and that team has built the automation to be successful and win. And how do you really vet that? It's just weird.
Well, and I think that what's most impressive is that, that approach to security is more than just your checks and your balances and your meeting certification. It is more of a culture that you're establishing and breeding that into everyone, because it's not something that you can do as a central org if you're a security department. you're trying to breed that into the culture. You're trying to evangelize security practices. That's the best part.
Ultimately, this is about liability. And if a cloud provider says they meet these particular requirements, then does the culture really matter when they're on the hook for those things either way?
You want confidence that they, even though they haven't been breached, they're preventing breaches. And so, yes, it's great that I have the ability to sue them when they lose my data or it gets compromised in something they did wrong. But that doesn't prevent my customer from being really upset with me as a customer, as their customer or their vendor, from losing the data. And so, while you can defer a lot of liability to the cloud provider in some cases, it still doesn't get you out of, it doesn't give you a free pass. And I think that's the key message I wish he had said, is that hey, there's a lot of things these providers do and Oracle does and everyone in the space does, but at the end of the day, it's really your responsibility to understand these things as well. The wording of this article and how it's phrased and their impliedness that other cloud providers aren't worried about these things and aren't doing these things right in this report from KPMG just really sends the wrong message, in my opinion.
Yeah, maybe I just have Oracle bias, but I feel slightly hypocritical about this whole thing, because when they say our compliance, our certification and compliance enough, or audits and certifications really enough, when it comes to somebody like AWS or Google Cloud, I think yes, they put a lot of effort into these things. They're audited. Lots of people go in there and make sure that they really are compliant with these things. But on the other side of that, we interview a lot of people for technical positions, and when I see certifications on people's resumes, my instant go-to is, do they really have the experience necessary, or have they just checked a box? So maybe I give the guy a little bit of credit, and yes, there should be more to it than just audits and certifications, but at the same time, there's only so much we can do as customers to ensure that we can trust these people enough to work with.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it comes down to trust. And if you can't build the trust with your vendor for the cloud, you shouldn't go to the cloud. But I think if you can't get to that level of trust with them, you should really reevaluate how you think about trust of your vendor and how you assess them. But I wish there was less articles like this and more about how to make people win in the cloud. All right, I think we beat that one to death.
I think so.
But let's move on to the other topic that we beat to death on the show, which is open source licensing.
I love licensing again.
Yes. So as we mentioned on several episodes, Mongo has released, changed their licensing to the server-side public license, which is their way of trying to compete with the hyperscalers and not allow them to build products and services that compete with them and their SaaS offerings on their clouds. And so this has now resulted in Red Hat dropping support for Mongo natively out of the Yum repos for both Red Hat 8 and Fedora. And they point out specifically back to the SSPL licensing for the reason for their change. And they feel that SSPL unfairly discriminates against a specific type of user, and they don't stand for that.
It took me a while to understand exactly what the issue was with this whole thing. And I guess when GPL was first envisioned, you would take libraries that somebody else had written, whether it was a shared C libraries or something else, and you would include parts of that code in your own code, and that all made sense. But now we're bundling, Mongo DB as part of a service because you use that for your data store. Now this is where they're kind of attacking us. They're saying that you cannot any longer bundle their software as part of your service. So it's the difference between calling something as a library and including something as a part of your service. It's kind of really weird. Like this, I swear they're just kind of shooting themselves in the foot. Now there's so many other document DB type options available. I don't see that it's working out well for Mongo at all.
Yeah, this does seem as a little like measure too late for the play that they're trying to make. Everyone's just going to react by dropping the support for that and moving on to the next provider of document DB. So
one of these pull quotes here in the ZDNet article, they reference Steve Ballmer famously warning of Linux GPL being a cancer that attaches itself to an intellectual property sense to everything it touches, which was proven wrong multiple times. But they call out in the article that the SSPL explicitly tries to do exactly what Ballmer warned of. Which that's if you're using Ballmer as your weapon against open source and some change to a licensing term, that's a pretty bad statement. I definitely am curious to see how document DB and Postgres JSON support and these things mature. And when we start seeing customers start dropping Mongo for these alternative solutions, that's really going to be a telling story. But I haven't seen a lot of blog posts about that exact topic happening yet, but I'm waiting and I'm watching for them. Amazon has announced additional details for Reinforce, which is their new security conference that's going to be held in June in Boston. They've announced there's going to be 4 tracks for your security people and engineers. The foundation track, which will cover your security basics and on the cloud. Rock the audit, which will be all about how to get through your various audit types for cloud computing. So I assume they're going to have talks and tracks on HIPAA and FedRAMP and FFIEC and all of the different flavors of security acronyms you can throw out there. They have some security deep dive sessions, which is really around deep diving into specific security technologies and techniques in the cloud. And then, of course, security pioneers, which I'm not exactly sure what that track's going to be quite yet. It's not really well described. They're going to have a security jam, which if you've never done security jam is a fantastic event to really crash course through security on Amazon. And then they also have a new event that they've never done before called Capture the Flag, which will be going on throughout the conference. The conference will be keynoted by Steve Schmidt, the CISO of Amazon Web Services.
We talked about these spin-out conferences that Amazon were doing, Reinforce and the Remars conference, and we mentioned that we hoped that the cost of these things would be significantly lower than reInvent to encourage more people to go. That kind of thing. Full conference pass, $1,100. That is a lot of money for a 2-day conference.
It is a lot of money. They also have workshops happening, which are additional fees. So if you want to go get your Amazon certification in one of the security principles, those are available at the conference for an additional fee on top of that $1,100. So it can get pretty expensive, but they are going to have 200, 300, and 400 level breakouts. So I mean, as long as those are good value and you don't mind the fact they're going to be on the internet in a week after the conference, spend your $1,100.
Yeah, I kind of wish they had a track for re-educating the old-fashioned security people with the new cloud ways of doing things, because that's a challenging thing right now.
Well, I suspect that some of these, like Rock the Audit and Security Pioneers, are going to have topics sort of around that. Rock the Audit to me is, here's how you pass an audit with cloud and with Amazon Web Services, and these are the things you need to understand. So I'm hoping those type of messages are going to come out more organically through these talks, because I think if you had a talk called, learn the new way of security, drop the old school method, and no one's going to go to that talk who's old school. All the new people are going to go. I was surprised there's not a DevSecOps track or a security automation track. But I'm sure there's going to be those type of talks inside these tracks. Just without the detail yet, it's hard to see.
Yeah, I love the Rock the Audit. Like, we'll do anything to spice this title up.
How do we make auditing less boring? Well, we'll rock it. Yeah. I'm actually sort of interested in this Capture the Flag event. Is it like a, black hat, team-based thing where you're trying to, break into another Amazon account, or you're trying to fix an Amazon account? I'm curious to see what that's going to end up being. The description on the website is pretty light, but they have updated it. So if you're interested in getting details, they also have a very long list of hotels if you want to get your hotel booked now. But they have not opened registration for Reinforce yet, but I'm assuming that's coming any day now.
I wonder if the Capture the Flag is like where you bring your burner Chromebook, trying to, to participate in.
As soon as you say it's a security event, people just naturally assume that they can show up with a laptop and try and hack the crap out of your event. So they have to have something targeted for people to pay attention to. Otherwise, who knows what people are going to do.
Idle hands.
Exactly. They better be interesting sessions, because there's a lot of people there who are going to cause a lot of trouble.
Yeah. So I went back to the website here, and so the Capture the Flag. This event runs over the course of the conference. It simulates real-world incident response and scenarios, and teams work to protect the infrastructure, which is their flag, against a number of escalating events. Teams are provided with an Amazon environment that is already running, and they have to design and implement detective and preventative controls that do not impede their application's availability.
Yeah, so it's game day. It's game day for Reinforce.
It's a very, but the fact it's over 2 days, that's a pretty large game day, because game day typically is, 4 to 8 hours during reInvent. But they also have the security jam, which is also similar to game day. So I'm curious to see what this one looks like and what it ends up being.
Yeah.
All right, moving right along to a 2019 prediction update. So much to Jonathan's chagrin, Slack has apparently, rumors have been that they've filed paperwork for a private IPO. Roughly, the estimates are that they're having 221 million in revenue per year with over 10 million daily users. The rumor says they're targeting a $10 billion valuation with its public debut, which will happen hopefully in the next 60 to 90 days. So, Jonathan, the window for a big acquisition is starting to close.
I'm still holding out for somebody to come along. Microsoft could come along, $12 billion, $13 billion, buy them out. Somebody should do it, really. It's, please, come on.
Overripe at 220.
I mean, $221 million in revenue, yeah, that's pretty decent, right?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I mean, it's great. Who's going to, replace that and, want to replace their platform on spending the money on it? I don't know.
I mean, Microsoft could put $221 million into Teams and try to get it to be more competitive. Like, that's a choice too. Why pay $13 billion for it?
Yeah, well, I guess IBM bought Red Hat. Red Hat were doing almost $3 billion a year. Yeah, maybe Slack's not quite there yet.
Well, we never know. We might get surprised, and you'll be here gloating for all of us.
I still got my fingers crossed. Yep.
We'll keep those fingers crossed. But curious to see how how their debut on the stock market comes out. But it's a little bit annoying because it's a private IPO paperwork, and so I can't see the what they filed with the SEC or any of that kind of stuff yet. So I'm hoping that'll come out soon, and we can talk about that because I'm sure we'll get insights into their cloud spend and their risks and all kinds of interesting stuff in those 10Ks.
Yeah, I'm always interested by these services like Slack, where the technology behind Slack is not complicated. They've built a business, they've advertised, they've got customers. That's really where the value is in that thing. The actual tech is really no more modern than 20-year-old IRC or something else. So somebody else could easily come along and build a new Slack. Maybe that's why they're not going to get picked up, because somebody else could come along and build a new, the next new messaging platform.
Off the top of my head, Microsoft Teams, WebEx Teams, Mattermost, IRC, HipChat, who already died. There's been many people who have tried and many people who have failed or died on that hill. So
it's not about the messaging; it's the culture. It's the funness of it, I think, is what really propels Slack to be adopted as it is. Like you go into a company where they're not using Slack, and then everyone is just dying to get their hands on it because all their friends are using it or they used it at their last company. So it's an interesting thing that they've built. It's not about the messaging at all, I don't think.
It's definitely popular in our company. It's popular in many companies, and so I expect that they'll continue to do well and not get acquired.
We'll see.
We'll see.
It's on.
Good.
All right. Look, Peter's not here to host the lightning round, and so Jonathan drew the short straw that he's going to host. He tried to push it on to Ryan, but we felt that was unfair to Ryan to host the lightning round.
I don't even know the rules, so I assume I'm going to win.
Well, the privilege of running the lightning round is that I get to assign the winner.
But if you follow Peter's rules, firsts are what win the lightning round, and technically this is our first guest on the lightning round.
Yeah.
So in theory, he should win technically.
Well, this is the
victory is mine.
This is the first time I've hosted lightning round, though. So we'll see.
That's true. It is also your first, but you are also in the lead. So I might have to claim cheating if you give the victory to yourself.
Well, this is the first time I've cheated. Then I will commit to assigning the winner in a fair and objective way.
All right.
That couldn't have sounded more dishonest if you tried.
I totally had my fingers crossed behind my back when I said that. It's fine. So this week in Lightning Round, we have Amazon RDS for Oracle now supports T3 instances.
So I get to pay full CPU prices to Oracle for 20% of the CPU capacity. Sounds great.
I thought we had to run Oracle on a whole half a data center or something, but T3, that sounds wonderful.
Fantastic. You get the image of the Flintstones of the little elves inside the camera or something. This is fantastic.
Azure announces GA for Query Store for SQL Data Warehouse.
What's a query store? I don't even know what this is. Makes no sense. I feel like Azure has a quota every week to announce the most benign features that have the weirdest names that don't give you any clue what they actually are, and they do it every week, and I'm shocked every week.
Do you care what Query Store is? I actually read this one.
Sure, if you know.
Query Store is an archive of all the queries you've made to the database so that you can go back and do your analytics and figure out exactly why it performs so badly.
Oh, that's lovely. But the trick to all SQL Server problems is update stats. So we know that already. Next.
So Azure now tells you when hardware is degraded with scheduled events.
Well, I'm glad they decided that they wanted to tell you that they had bad hardware. I would have hoped they would have just taken care of it because they're a cloud provider.
And if it's a scheduled event, are they scheduling the degradation? Because that seems a little dishonest. Like, wait.
No, they're just telling you once in a while.
On a schedule.
On a schedule.
Yeah.
When they feel like it.
Yeah.
Google Cloud now supports WebSockets for App Engine flexible environment.
WebSockets are still popular, right? I mean, it's been a while since I've supported them, but it seems to like all the cool kids want that, and now you can put it into your PaaS offering. I guess that's a win.
Amazon API Gateway just started supporting WebSockets too, so I guess it's not surprising Google implement the same thing.
It's still very prevalent in applications, right? You see it all the time, like where you're either limited or you have to enable. So it makes sense that they do this too.
If there's only a company that made $221 million a year on WebSocket technology that was going to go IPO sometime in the next 60 to 90 days, who we could point to as a fantastic WebSockets use case.
Azure Stream Analytics now supports Azure SQL databases as references.
I would hope that Stream Analytics for Azure would reference SQL databases out of the box. It seems like an odd choice not to support that day one.
I had the same thought. I was caught off guard by this. I'm like, oh, okay, so something they should have done forever ago.
We have a contender. TomTom and Microsoft partner to get users bad directions.
The title is just great.
And I wrote the title because I didn't know how else to summarize this particular topic. But apparently they're going all in on Azure in 2019, and Microsoft's going to license the map technology from TomTom, and I was like, this is just bad after bad. I don't even know what to do for you people.
Yeah, I can just imagine Clippy popping up in the GPS in your car. Like, are you sure you wanted to turn back there?
Recalculating.
DynamoDB Local adds support for Dynamo transactions, on-demand capacity, and 20 global secondary indexes.
If you're a big fan of developing locally, I guess you want secondary indexes to do on-demand capacity of my laptop. This is a weird one.
You know, what's weird about this is like the feature I most like about this release is not anything that's in the title. It's not about transactions or on-demand capacity or secondary indexes. What they added is the metrics so that it will tell you exactly the number of capacity, read and write capacity units you should deploy in production. And they completely missed mentioning that in the release.
Well, but that only is a factor if you're pre-provisioning that capacity. If it's on demand, you don't care, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, I think people want to move away from pre-provision read and write. It's pain. And so what you call laziness, I call it global optimization.
Not again. I don't know. I'm deducting points here.
Oh,
no. Okay. Develop and test step functions locally.
Step by step.
Nice.
Oh, our first karaoke.
Yeah. It's a whole bunch of firsts. Now, this is definitely a cool thing because step functions are one of those things where they can be longer running. There's multiple forks in the logic that you need to test out. And so when you're doing anything you can do to reduce the iteration time while you're developing on these types of things, we're using something like step functions is a very powerful advantage. And I like it. I'm a fan.
Definitely. I still wish you could do like a breakpoints in the step functions and stop and inspect things in flight and then start it up again. I'm hoping that's something they're working on, but this is pretty cool. It's a good. I think local development environments is definitely a step in the right direction. It seems like they're moving that way.
It's definitely nice to have on a plane because that's what whenever I want to develop on something that's on the cloud, and you're like, oh crap, I don't want to pay for the Wi-Fi, so now I can do it locally. I mean, that makes me happy.
Most people just want to sleep on the plane, but if step functions do it for you, then whatever.
That's only true if you're flying to Britain, which I know you do often, and that's a very long flight, so you have to sleep on a plane. But otherwise, no. get some work done in privacy. Like you can get into the developer zone on the plane, man. You just code it out.
And I would just go into this kind of weird coma state where I'm just staring into the distance and not watching the movies and not listening to anything. And yeah,
maybe the copious amounts of alcohol before boarding the plane.
Quite. I got 2 kids, man. I got to do something. Apogee have announced, or Google have announced some enhancements to the Apogee portal.
So they basically just decided they wanted to compete with readme.io and build a documentation portal that you can theme. Great.
It seems like it, right?
Well, the developer portals for these things, a lot of times you're showcasing your API to someone who has no idea how to use it. So I kind of get the use on this. That's where you publish your documentation. The theme's all just branding. It makes sense.
Okay, and finally, Microsoft acquires DataSense management from brightbytes.
So this is, I don't know how I feel about, big data being used in education to track my children at school as a solution. But great, I guess. It's a little weird.
Well, we threatened for years the permanent record for children, even though that thing never actually exists until high school. But now we have people like DataSense. You really can go back and see the grades your kid got in, first grade and second grade. It is kind of scary.
Wait, what do you mean the permanent record doesn't exist?
There is no records are passed.
I have such a beef with Miss Garcia. This is not cool.
Well, I do feel bad for my kids then, I guess, when they don't get that job because their preschool scores were just not high enough. Back when they were 4, so that's all right.
Yeah.
All right, that's a fantastic lightning round. So, what are we really declaring Ryan the winner? I mean,
I think we sort of have to, don't we?
I mean, there's a lot of firsts by Jonathan this time too. Hosted the thing. There's a lot of things. A lot of consideration. A lot of careful analytics being managed by the Oracle and Google clouds to determine the winner of today's lightning round.
Do we need like a supercomputer noise for the background?
This is it's a tough decision. Mostly because I've forgotten what it was that you said that I thought was a good contender.
But you gave him credit for the global optimization, and then you took credit away for the global optimization. So
yeah. Sort of shot myself in the foot there.
All right. Well, when you play it back, you can add in who won, and then we'll be a surprise when we listen to the podcast. Like who won?
Well, I'm gonna do like a Black Mirror. I'm gonna record 3 endings, and you won't know which one is the real one until you listen to the podcast.
As long as I don't have to jump off a balcony in the process.
Oh yeah, that's pretty gruesome. No, I think this week Ryan wins. It's his first show, and the global optimization thing. Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
1 point to Ryan.
I think it's fair.
It is fair. It also preserves my lead in the regular.
We'll see, and because we are planning to have more guests on the show in the future. So I think what we're going to do is we're just going to compile the guests into a single score. So, Ryan has now contributed to the overall guest score, and if guest wins at the end of the year, then we invite all the guests back for a big party. I think that's how I'll have to do it. I think
Ryan deserves to win this time.
I agree. I think he had some great comments.
And on Monday, whichever place you want to take me for lunch is fine.
Fair enough. I will make a note of that.
Moving on to cool tools with Jonathan. What do you have this week?
Yes. It is upon us so quickly yet again.
I'm doing my best not to laugh, but I can hear.
I will bring you in the unpublished audio from the past 3 or 4 weeks.
From the first episode one is the best.
I'm thinking about doing little mini outtake shows between the real releases, just to keep people entertained. I think maybe we get more listeners that way.
Maybe the blooper reel.
Yeah. I actually thought about editing Peter into this podcast, even though it wasn't here. I got enough clips of him that I could make him. I could make a whole show.
Well, we had talked about before he went on vacation that he and I could record, and then you could just edit your audio into it later. But we failed to do that because you didn't give us the password for Zencastr, and so we just kind of lost the track. And then I was like, "Well, let's do it tomorrow." And he's like, "I'm out on PTO," and I'm like, "Oh, that's unfortunate then."
Yeah. It may be a little weird me making all these wonderful comments. Very thoughtful.
that we're not reacting to.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, moving on.
I do like the idea of Peter's voice just being sort of weirdly interjected in and like nonsensical, like clearly pieced together language.
Yeah, we can make that happen.
Yeah, then we should do it. Then I can read about it next week.
For you, the listeners of the Cloud Pod podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook downloaded with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/thecloudpod. Again, that's audibletrial.com/thecloudpod for your free audiobook.
We have two cool tools for this week. The first isn't really a tool. It is the new Amazon architecture icons, first seen in a reInvent last year. These are now available in all your favorite drawing applications like Creately, Cloudcraft, Draw.io, Lucidchart, etc. And these are all the redesigned service icons. We'll link to them in the show notes. Amazon.com/architecture/icons. Much better, much less orange than the previous ones.
I like that they provided you dark and light backgrounds for your PowerPoints. So you can now, if you have a dark background PowerPoint, this now fits without having to change everything.
It's a sign of the times. If you don't support dark mode, you're just yesterday's tech.
So eventually we have light mode, we have dark mode. Do we get gray mode at some point? If you don't want to be dark and you don't want to be light?
No, you must be decisive at all times.
Fair enough.
Wow, you sounded just like Peter right there. That was hilarious. Peter, is that you?
I don't even know what that means.
Second cool tool for this week is TerraTest from Gruntwork, which is a Go library which makes it easier to write automated tests for your infrastructure code so that you can spin up, test, and destroy environments programmatically. And Ryan gave me a heads up about this one.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this tool. I have like 9,000 things I want to integrate it with already. Some of them written, some of them not written. So I haven't played around with it firsthand. And they're very clear in the documentation that it's not exactly easy to implement, but the power of this being able, what you can test with it, I'm really super excited getting my hands on it.
Yeah, I thought about kind of encapsulating Terraform in Lambda and doing stuff for that to manage resources from a service that I'm building. And this basically does exactly the same thing.
I like how ambitious they are. I mean, there's quite a bit of technology they're trying to cover: Terraform, Packer, Docker images. If you want to, for some reason, execute commands on servers using SSH, you can do that. APIs, Kubernetes, like there's a ton of great value in this tool. And for those who are really into TDD, testing your infrastructure as code in this manner is a fantastic option. So I'm super excited to see what we do with this.
Okay.
All right, Jonathan, that sounds great. Where do we find these cool tools?
Links to the cool tools in the show notes at thecloudpod.net.
All right, Ryan. Well, thanks for joining us this week. Where, if people wanted to follow you, where would they find your information on Twitter?
Well, I am on Ryron01 on Twitter, and that's actually pretty ubiquitous across most social media platforms. And you shouldn't follow me. I'm amazingly dull, and don't leave my house.
That's a glowing recommendation for following you on Twitter, which I have just done based on that fantastic recommendation.
His latest tweet was, "Hey, do you want to come watch paint dry with me?"
Well, fantastic. All right. Well, thanks again for joining us and filling in for Peter. And we will definitely have you back on in the future. And hopefully next time we get you here with Peter too, because then you can talk about Peter's Wikipedia page, which I am still the editor-in-chief of.
Oh, this is fantastic. I will make some edits.
You should, yes. And that is the Week in Cloud. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Foghorn Consulting and Audible.com. Subscribe today on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, and tweet us your feedback at #TheCloudPod.